What's going on, people? Welcome to the Fantasy Football League winners. My name is Will, and joining me is my co-host Eric. And normally we don't make content for this, but this is our first time actually making this. We partner with Fantasy Football League winners. If you guys want to see any of our other content, you can follow us on YouTube at the FF Ball Busters. But with that being said, Eric, how you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, man. Happy to be here. And like you said, really happy to be doing our very first episode for the league winners. Really thankful to Thomas, the man running the show. So shout out to you. Thank you for the opportunity to be part of this team and to contribute to a great site like League Winners. Um, Also, since we are now partnered with the League Winners, we are also partnered with Underdog Fantasy. So if you're looking for the best place to play best ball, to place player prop bets, to do mock drafts, Underdog is the place to be. They're the best site in the business for all your DFS and sporting bets needs. So if you're a first-time depositor, use our code FFLW when you sign up in order to get 100% deposit match. That means if you put in $20, you'll have $40 to play with. If you put in 50, you'll get 100, all the way up to $100. Underdog is going to match your deposit. So please, again, go use our code FFLW when you sign up at Underdog today.
We also have some cool merch and apparel you guys can check out on snacks.online. Our boy Zay from Do Numbers, he makes merch, clothing, cool hoodies, shirts, stuff of that nature. So if you're looking for stuff like that, you can use promo code FFBallbusters15 for 15% off your order for just some cool merch and apparel. So, help support us, help support our boy. But with that being said, we're actually going to get into the video now. And Eric, you want to go ahead and break down the video for the people?
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Dynasty rookie rankings today. Pretty excited to get into it. We'll be covering players at every fantasy relevant position. So we're talking quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and tight end. So in order to keep this video from running way too long, we won't spend a ton of time talking about the top guys at each position. I'm sure you've heard about all of them before. No need to be repetitive. But we will dive deeper into the guys that we have ranked kind of outside consensus or just like the normal rankings. So yeah, that's the intro. Let's jump into the QBs.
Absolutely. Who do you want to list off first?
You go first. Give us your top five.
All right, so listing off my top five, my number one is going to be C.J. Stroud. Number two, Anthony Richardson. Number three, Bryce Young. Number four, Will Levis. And number five, Hendon Hooker.
Yeah, I like it. We have very similar lists. The only difference on my end is that I have Anthony Richardson at one, and then it goes Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, Hendon Hooker. Um, so again, a lot of these guys you've heard a ton about throughout the draft cycle and throughout the combine process, all that. I do want to touch on Anthony Richardson a little bit because some people are still doubting him, have him behind C.J. Stroud and Bryce Young. Some people are putting him where we do, but just kind of a brief summary of why I think his upside is worth the risk. Last year, only 8 quarterbacks averaged 18 or more points per game in the NFL. 6 of those 8 were running quarterbacks. And then 4 of those 6 that were the running quarterbacks were actually outside the top 12 in passer rating. So I think that's evidence as to why Anthony Richardson doesn't have to be a good passer in order to dominate for fantasy. And his ceiling is really high, obviously, because if he develops as a passer, he's also the most athletic quarterback that we've ever seen enter the NFL. And then his floor is really high, in my opinion, as well, as long as he's on the field, which I'll acknowledge is a substantial caveat. But if he is on the field, there's no reason he can't do what Justin Fields did last year.
I absolutely agree. The only reason that I have Anthony Richardson at 2 and C.J. Stroud at 1 is because I feel like C.J. Stroud as a passer is already there. I feel like the only thing that C.J. Stroud really does need to add to his game is his willingness to run because he can, but he hesitates to. So if that's something that he can develop and make more of a part of his game, which I feel like he's going to have to at the NFL level, I think he could end up being pretty good. This is more just from a standpoint of startability early than like pure potential, because if it's pure potential, like Eric said, I don't think anybody on this list has as high of a ceiling as Anthony Richardson.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Love the way you put it. I think CJ Stroud probably is the safest quarterback in the entire bunch. So I don't mind you having him at 1 or anybody else having him at 1. We're kind of splitting hairs there. And then with the rest of the guys, Bryce Young, one of the more kind of dynamic, more poised under pressure quarterbacks that we have. Will Levis, also kind of a high ceiling, maybe not quite to the same degree as Anthony Richardson, but also just not a finished product. Hendon Hooker is just well outside the top 4 for me.
Hmm.
We'll see what kind of draft capital he gets, but he's just not quite on the same level as the rest of these guys.
Yeah, definitely agree there. And with Bryce Young being at 3, that doesn't mean either of us are low on him. We do feel like he is one of those high caliber quarterbacks available this draft. It's just a matter of it's tough to get excited about a guy who didn't perform at the combine, but with that being said, he should still perform at the NFL level.
100%. So yeah, we went through that pretty quick, but we're going to have a lot of names to talk about here. So let's get into the running back group. You want to hit us with your top 10?
Absolutely. For the running back group, of course, at number 1, I've got Bijan. At 2, I've got Jameer Gibbs. 3, Zach Charbonnet. 4, Devin Achane. 5, Zach Evans. 6, Sean Tucker. 7, Tank Bigsby. 8, Kendre Miller. 9, Tyjae Spears. And 10, Izzy Abanikanda.
Okay. All right. So we are going to have a little bit of disagreement here.
Hmm.
I think most of the top 5 is about the same, but for me, it's Bijan, Jameer Gibbs, Zach Charbonnet. I have Kendre Miller at 4, Devin Achane at 5, Zach Evans at 6, Tyjae Spears at 7, and then some guys that I know are going to ruffle some feathers that are way different than consensus. I have Evan Hall at 8, Dwayne McBride at 9, and Sean Tucker at 10. Um, and to make a note, these are like strictly my evaluation rankings, like based on what I think of them as prospects, without really projecting draft capital necessarily. So come draft time, like things might be a little bit different based on where these guys land. But just as prospects, that's what I think.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that. I mean, I'm excited to hear what you got to say about those guys as well. But, just to run through the top 3, just so we can get through those quick. Bijan, we all know, he's the most complete running back in this class. He's been the top running back prospect in this class for the last 2 years. Nothing about that's going to change going into this draft. Jameer Gibbs, undersized, but also very dynamic in the receiving game. So he's a threat out there in the field, especially out in open field. So especially depending on the landing spot, he could do extremely well in the league. And then Zach Charbonnet, one of the better pure runners, also a good pass catcher as well. Strong guy, very hard to bring down. Just a bowling ball out there, really, but really was able to get some production out there at UCLA after he transferred. So, yeah, I guess we can start to break down the people after that. For Devin Achane, I feel like he's just one of the guys who's a burner out there. He's very underrated in between the tackles. And he's just one of those guys that if he gets out in open space and he could make a move, and he's one of those home run hitters.
100%. Yeah, I have him ranked one spot behind you, but obviously he's got the world class speed. He's a more well rounded back than most people give him credit for. Even at 188 pounds, his forced missed tackle rate is near the top of the class.
Hmm.
And like you said, he shows good vision and consistency, even with his in between the tackles running, which is a little unusual for somebody of his size. But yeah, I think he can translate well if given the opportunity.
Absolutely. And then my number 5, Zach Evans. I feel like Zach Evans is one of the better pure runners in this class. Not a great receiver at all, but in terms of just pure rushing, he is very good. Not to say he can't catch the ball, but it's not something he was really asked to do too much in college. So depending on the landing spot, he could end up doing very well. We've seen pure runners in the league do very well in the likes of like Nick Chubb, stuff like that. I'm not saying that Zach Evans is next Nick Chubb, but he does have that kind of ceiling that we're looking at right there. Especially depending on what he does at his pro day, because we haven't really seen him do anything yet. We're still waiting for him to get a little bit healthier, but I do believe in Zach Evans and his potential. For Sean Tucker, another guy I feel like is a great runner out there, pretty well rounded as well. I don't really have too much to say about Sean Tucker. Tank Bigsby, he's a strong runner, big guy. You just want to see him be able to be more of a downhill runner, not dance and juke and jive so much, but we'll see if the league is able to, or whatever coach he gets is able to bring that out of him. Kendre Miller, another guy we've talked about who's very well-rounded, another strong runner, looks great out there on the field. Tyjae Spears, someone who's quietly rose up my draft rank since Eric's brought him to my attention out of Tulane. He's very, very quick, exceptionally quick out there on the field. Not the fastest guy in the world, but he's able to make space for himself with the moves that he makes. And Izzy Abanikanda out of Pitt is just somebody that I feel like has also risen up my boards a little bit more. I just really like to look at him on tape, honestly. He's just one of those guys that passes the eye test for me.
Yeah, I love all that. I can get into some more of my list. I also want to touch on Zach Evans because I think he's probably one of the more polarizing running backs in the class.
Hmm.
I see him as a really powerful runner, great at fighting through contact, He's also one of the best in the class in both explosive run rate, which means gains of 10 plus yards, as well as breakaway run rate, which is 20 plus yards. There's been a lot of talk about him just lacking vision, and I don't really agree. Like, sure, there were times in his tape where I felt like he made questionable decisions. But if you look at a stat like relative success rate, so shout out to Noah Hills, Noah More Parties on Twitter, go check him out. A lot of great work with running backs specifically. But I'm using his relative success rate stat here. It shows that he's gaining positive yards on a consistent basis and also more often than his teammates. And so, considering the guys that he played with, like Kendre Miller and Quinshawn Judkins, I feel like that's a really, really impressive stat. Um, so, yeah, I have him ranked at 6. I believe you have him at 5,
Hmm.
probably slightly higher than consensus. You talked about Tajay. He moves unlike any other back in this class. He's a really, really exciting and dynamic guy to watch. I don't have a ton extra to say, but I have him at 7. And then the two guys that are probably the furthest from consensus for me, Evan Hull and Dwayne McBride at 8 and 9. Um, excuse me. Evan Hall, he's one of the best, if not the best, receiving backs in this class. He deserves to be talked about, I think, alongside the likes of Jameer Gibbs and Deuce Vaughn, at least in the receiving aspect of the game. His receptions per game were only third behind Gibbs and Deuce Vaughn. His single best season target share is second, only behind Deuce Vaughn in the entire collegiate space. And he was the only running back in the country to put up a 200-yard receiving game this year. So all of that being said, I think he's fantastic as a receiver. That's definitely going to translate once he gets to the next level. And then on top of that, he was a really efficient runner on a terrible team at Northwestern. And he has the requisite size and speed to succeed at the NFL level, in my opinion. And then lastly, here, I'll wrap it up with Dwayne McBride. He's one of the best pure runners in this entire class. He's got great vision and decisiveness to navigate past the line of scrimmage. He also forces a ton of missed tackles at a rate second only to Javonte Williams among running backs of the last decade. So that skill set allows him to get to the second level, and once he gets there, he's fantastic at ripping off big gains. His breakaway conversion rate is the highest of any G5 running back drafted since 2010, so that's huge. The only cons I really see in his game is that he's pretty much a total zero as a receiver, so he's only going to be a first and second down guy. And he also struggled with fumbles in college. So that's kind of what drops him down to 9 for me. But just as a pure runner, he's fantastic.
No, I like that. I like that a lot.
All right. So that will pretty much wrap it up for the running backs. Let's get into our wide receiver list here, and I'll toss it back to you.
Yep. For my wide receiver rankings, at 1, I've got Jackson Smith and Jigba. At 2, I've got Quentin Johnston. 3, Jordan Addison. 4, Jalen Hyatt. 5, Zay Flowers. 6, Marvin Mims. 7, Josh Downs. 8, Rashee Rice. 9, Cedric Tillman. And then 10, Xavier Hutchinson.
Okay. I like it. I think we're going to have to get into a little Jalen Hyatt discussion here because I have
Mm-hmm.
him ranked significantly lower than you do. But
Mm-hmm.
again, I don't know if you were following the same idea as me, but I didn't really take into account draft capital, like I said. So he would definitely be higher on this list, knowing that he's probably going to be a first round guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for me, the top 5 is almost exactly the same. JSN at 1, Quentin Johnston at 2, Jordan Addison 3. I've been bouncing him and Zay Flowers back and forth off of each other. Zay Flowers is my 4, Josh Downs at 5. And then I have one of my favorite guys in the class in Marvin Mims at 6. I have A.T. Perry all the way up at 7, Cedric Tillman at 8, Jalen Hyatt at 9, and Rashee Rice at 10. So, Will, yeah, I'd like to hear your take specifically on Jalen Hyatt and why you have him up at 4.
Well, Jalen Hyatt is at 4 for me because I do feel like he's a pretty well-rounded package. So when we went into the combine, the one thing that we thought about Jalen Hyatt was that he's a burner. He's just a really fast guy who's able to make moves, get open, and make things happen out there, right? When we get to the combine and we find out he's not the fastest in the world, but he is still really good at everything else that he tested in as well. So in terms of that, with things like speed getting bumped down, maybe even just a tad, because 4.4 speed is still elite speed, but just bumped down just a tad, but everything else bumped up more for me. That was able to raise his ceiling for me in terms of how I feel he's going to do in the league. Also, like you said, just I did factor in draft capital. I feel like he's going to be a first
Yeah.
round guy, and he's going to get the opportunity. So I think when you factor all of those together, he had to kind of land in my top 5 for me.
Yeah, that's more than fair, especially considering draft capital. Like you said, he's probably going to get the opportunity with the investment that a team's going to put into him. Um, just from my just overall evaluation of him, I feel like he's more of a one-trick pony than a lot of these other guys in the class. He's clearly got the top end speed. He's really good at stacking defenders. He's great ball tracker. I just feel like that's kind of all he's got. Um, and that's going to be really valuable to an NFL team, but I'm not as certain that that's going to translate to fantasy production,
Hmm.
just because it's not going to be as consistent as we would get, I don't know, from a slot guy or from a more volume type receiver.
Ah, that's fair. That makes sense.
Yeah. Um, I want to talk about Marvin Mims. Again, like I said, one of my favorite guys in this class. He's like a walking highlight reel. Super explosive as an athlete and also as a playmaker. He wins with his speed and also his understanding of leverage versus DBs. Great at stacking defenders, similar to what I said about Jalen Hyatt just now. Elite ball tracking, reels in deep passes all the time. He also has great hands. And even at 5'11, 183, he routinely wins in jump ball and contested catch situations. Not necessarily something you'd expect from a guy his size, but he's great at it. And on top of all that, he's also an analytics darling. 96th percentile breakout age. He broke out at 18, 96th percentile ADOT, and an astronomical 20 yards per reception for his career. Just ridiculous. So, yeah, I love him. He's in my sixth spot.
No, I definitely like that a lot. Somebody I wanted to make sure I talked about out of this list is my number 8 spot, Mr. Rashee Rice. He's somebody I've kind of been pounding the table for this whole offseason. He's somebody that going into the combine, I didn't really think of him as an athletic prospect. I knew he was a good route runner. He had sure hands. He's one of those guys who's really good at finding open space and pockets in the defense. In terms of like, I'm not saying that he is this person, but in terms of like a Cooper Cup type of player where he's able to find those seams, those creases, and just sit in them and wait and sit open. But after the combine, we do find out that he did test pretty high on the athletic scale. In terms of his 40-yard dash, he ran faster than I thought he was going to. Ended up running a 4.51. He had one of the highest. Actually, he was tied for the highest vertical jump out of the draft. His broad jump was great, 10 feet 8 inches. So he did test better athletically than I thought he would. And with that being said, I'm just really excited to see a guy who can one test well athletically, but still has that football IQ that goes along with it, being able to find those pockets and creases in the defense.
Yeah, I love that. I do
Hmm.
have him a little bit lower than you do, but I feel a lot of the same things. Great in zone versus zone coverage. And he's also the type of guy that I think turns 50-50 balls more into like 70-30 balls. Like
Yeah,
he is great in those situations. So I love
yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Um, and then the last guy that I guess I want to get into in depth here is A.T. Perry, since I have him a lot higher than I think a lot of people probably do. To me, he's kind of like an arbitrage Quentin Johnston. Like if you miss on him, he's kind of like QJ light. Similar skill sets, probably not quite as fast, not quite as good after the catch, which would be tough to do considering Quentin Johnston is probably the best in the country at that. Um, but I do think he's probably a better and more technical route runner than Quentin Johnston. He's got that similar big frame at 6'3 and a half, 198. Really good speed for his size. He ran a 4.47 at the combine. He can go up and get it, win in 50-50 ball situations. And he's also, again, good after the catch, just not quite to the level of QJ. And then on top of that, he was a fantastic producer during his final 2 years at Wake Forest, putting up 152 receptions, over 2,000 yards, and 26 touchdowns.
Absolutely. And then just to round things out, just because I feel like there is a bit of contention, maybe even between the number 1 and 2 spot with Quentin Johnston and JSN, just to make sure people understand why we have JSN above Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston, in terms of his measurables, in terms of his athleticism, he is very much up there. But JSN, he didn't run the 40-yard dash, which a lot of us wanted to see what his speed ended up being. But it didn't really matter to us because we saw what his agility ratings were, and in terms of the shuttle and the 3 cone drill, and it was just off the charts. When the next guy is point 0.3 behind you, that's something that you really got to look at in terms of route running, in terms of his hands, in terms of just his college production when he was on the field and he wasn't hurt. He's just amazing. So it is great to see him out there, and I'm excited to really see where he lands at too.
Yeah, he's going to be the most exciting wide receiver off the board. And I think he'll succeed probably wherever he goes. All right, so that'll do it for the wide receivers. Lastly, we'll get into the tight ends. Will, if you want to hit us with your top five.
Absolutely. My top 5 has kinda changed in, recent times due to Eric and, just the stuff that he's taught me about some of these tight ends. So at first, I'm gonna have Dalton Kincaid, 2, Michael Mayer, 3, Sam Laporta, 4, Darnell Washington, and 5, Luke Musgrave.
I was wondering when I was going to convert you.
Mhm.
Michael Mayer has been at the top of a lot of people's draft boards, to be fair, and continues to be. But you have now come to the Dalton Kincaid side of things. I also have him as my one. We actually have the exact same tight end top five.
Oh, okay.
So not a ton to talk about as far as like differences in our rankings. But let's talk about some guys that might be a little bit off consensus. Sam Laporta at 3 and above guys like Darnell Washington and Luke Musgrave, I feel like might be a little bit different than what most people see. Um, I think he was a great producer at
Mhm.
Iowa. Maybe not quite to the level of like a Michael Mayer, who was one of the most productive tight ends we've seen in recent years, but still up there. Fantastic hands, good route runner. He showed really good athleticism when it came to his combine performance. And my favorite thing about him is his open field running. Like once he gets the ball in his hands, his yards after catch is ridiculous. So aggressive, great at breaking tackles. So yeah, that's why I have him all the way up at 3.
Yeah, and I know you guys are probably wondering why Darnell Washington is so low on our list. I know he's somebody that a lot of people looked at as a top 3, maybe even top 2 tight end in this class. And in terms of draft capital and where he's going to land at, absolutely. He's going to end up getting drafted pretty early. He's going to get that draft capital because he is 6'7", two, what is he, 270?
Close to it. I think he's high 260s.
Yeah, high 260s, ran a 4.6. I know a lot of people are excited about stuff like that, but when you're looking at his college stats and you realize he's had 45 career catches in college, that's not the most encouraging thing in the world. Also, I think he's going to be great for blocking out there on the field. So he should be on the field, but I just don't know how much teams are really going to scheme him into the receiving game, knowing that he doesn't have a whole lot of experience catching the ball. And I know there were clips going around at the combine where, he was catching passes out there, one-handed catches, and that's cool. But that's without any type of contention, any type of contest, any type of defender he had to shake off. Now, do I believe he's going to be able to outbody defenders? I would hope so at 6'7", 264, But that's something that it stands to be seen if teams are going to really be using him in the receiving game. So that's why I am a little bit lower on Darnell Washington than a lot of people are.
Yeah, fully agree. I think, in the limited amount of catches that he does have on his tape, he showed the ability to be good in contested catch situations,
Hmm.
which, like you said, he better be at that size. But yeah, to mirror a lot of what you said, it's just more so, is he going to get the opportunity to be a volume tight end, which is what we want to see for fantasy production. And I'm just not confident that he's going to get that.
Right.
So yeah, I think that'll wrap it up. It didn't end up being too crazy long. I think we got this out in a reasonable amount of time.
Hmm.
I hope you guys learned a little bit about some of these guys that we have off of the consensus rankings, some of the deeper kind of values that hopefully you'll be able to get in your dynasty drafts. Will, you want to wrap us up here?
Yeah, just wanted to remind you guys we are partnered with Underdog Fantasy. So if you guys check the links down in the description below or use promo code FFLW, that'll make sure that when you sign up for if Underdog Fantasy as a first time user, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Like Eric said, you put in 20, they'll give you 20, put in 40, they'll give you 40, so on and so forth. And also make sure you check out our boy Zay at Do Numbers. That link will be down in the description as well. Use promo code FFBallbusters15 for 15% off your order. And yeah, honestly, I'm just really excited to see how this goes. And again, thank you to Thomas and Fantasy League winners for just letting us have this platform, have this opportunity. So it's just
Yeah.
awesome to be here, honestly.
Yeah. Again, big shout out. Thank you for letting us join the team. Super excited to be here. And I hope that we can add and contribute to the team. I hope that we bring in some viewers. Hope you guys learn, like I said. And yeah, I think that'll wrap us up. So we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.